Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. My name is Jasmin. I'll be your moderator for this session today. I am from Reef Check Malaysia. I'm the Chief Public Policy and Advocacy Officer for RCM, in short for Reef Check Malaysia. So welcome to the Climate Governance Malaysia's Roundtable Series 2025. Thank you for your interest and presence to the session this morning. So before we start, a little bit about CGM Roundtable Series 2025. As you know, it's a collaborative platform aimed at bringing together policymakers, industry leaders, academics, and corporate players to crowdsource practical policy recommendations for Malaysia's climate transition. So CGM has first held the Roundtable Series back in 2022, and it has proven successful in moving intended agenda forward. So now we are in 2025. We are running 19 sessions across 6 themes. So today, our theme is under biodiversity. Other themes include agriculture, energy, resources transition, finance, built environment, community engagement. So under the biodiversity theme today, the title for the session is the Coastal and Marine Ecosystems, looking at values, threats, and pathways to protection. So on behalf of CGM, I would like to also acknowledge and extend our appreciation to partners and our 4 subject matter experts for today, leading these sessions. And also special thank you to PwC Malaysia, who's here to support in capturing outputs from this session and translating it into actions. We have 1.5 hour session today. We would like to allocate the bulk of the time for Q&A sessions from you. So there are 4 objectives to the session today that will be covered by 4 panelists. First objective will be to look at the strategic value of coastal and marine ecosystems in national development. And then we follow on to policy and regulatory frameworks for coastal and marine conservation. And third one, looking into building ecological and community resilience in coastal ecosystems. And the fourth one would be to looking at potential biodiversity stewardship for marine conservation. So we have 4 panelists today. Thank you very much for agreeing to be part of the panel session today, guys. First foremost, I would like to introduce Ms. Cheryl. She's a research fellow and head for Center for Straits of Malacca at the Maritime Institute of Malaysia. A quick introduction, she specializes in marine environmental resources management, ocean governance, marine pollution, maritime industry practices here locally and abroad. She's currently now attached as a visiting research fellow at the Policy Research Center of the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies in Tokyo, Japan. Next, we have Dr. Khairul Naim, the Deputy Undersecretary for the Biodiversity Management section in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. Dr. Naim is the Malaysia's national focal point for the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, the Nagoya Protocol, and also serves as Malaysia's head of delegation and lead negotiator in several multilateral environmental agreements, such as the CBD in Canada, Colombia, and also the Preparatory Commission for the entry into force of the High Seas Treaty in 2025. Next, we have Associate Professor Dr. Sazlina Salleh. Herself is an ocean scientist with extensive expertise at the intersection of ocean science and management. Currently, she is the Associate Professor and Deputy Director at the Center for Policy Research, Universiti Sains Malaysia. She is part of the expert group on marine spatial planning in the Western Pacific up until 2026 and actively promotes sustainable ocean governance and integration of scientific findings into policy frameworks. Last but not least, we have Norizan, Mazlan, co-founder and senior expert project and partnership development at Nature-Based Solutions, Sdn Bhd. She herself looking at developing solutions for positive biodiversity conservation outcomes via the provision of protected area management support, scaling conservation finance, and undertaking activities, studies related to biodiversity conservation. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being with us. So just a quick reminder, we will try to keep strictly to time. Each of you would have 10 minutes to present, and more importantly, the goal today is not just only to get a discussion, but to get output and outcomes or other suggestions that we that can come up from this session for us to take ahead to shape Malaysia's climate governance agenda. So for the participants, we have Q&A chat open throughout the session. So please feel free to pop in your questions at any time during the session. We will address those questions accordingly. And at the end of the session, please don't just leave. A Zoom survey will pop up, and so we would like to receive your feedback. So yeah, so without further ado and without wasting any more time, I would like to invite Ms. Cheryl as the first speaker for today. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Thank you very much, Jasmin, for the very kind introduction. Esteemed speakers, distinguished participants, friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. Allow me to first thank CGM and Reef Check Malaysia, and I believe PwC as well, for this very kind invitation for me to speak on something that I'm personally so passionate about. I'll be speaking to you today on the topic focusing on enhancing the strategic values of coastal and marine ecosystems in national development through the adoption of the Blue Economy Framework. As we all know, Blue Economy is the current focus really at various levels and platforms. So I'm going to try to link that to how do we look at coastal and marine ecosystem in the sense of a Blue Economy Framework. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we are aware, the seas are now a host to many more activities than ever before. Ocean and coastal management have long ceased to be entirely concerned with fishing and navigation, but now also encompass the management of a myriad of activities which coexist in the sea and coastal areas. The increasingly complex structure of ocean users demands changes in marine and coastal management approaches. Now, these changes has taken form in many different ways in many countries, but the approach is always intended to resolve conflicts among the different users of the sea, promote economic development, and protect the marine environment and coastal communities. And by that, I would emphasize also on the fact that Malaysia is a maritime nation by virtue of its geographic and dependence on the sea and coast. Malaysia is strategically located in the Indo-Pacific region, with its coastline and borders around the Straits of Malacca, Gulf of Thailand, South China Sea, and the Sulu-Sulawesi Seas. In terms of ecosystem and habitats, because of that, Malaysia's coast and seas comprise mainly the three main tropical marine ecosystems that we are all very fond of. The first one is coral reefs, the second one mangroves, and the third major one would be seagrass beds. Now, these ecosystems provide goods and services, including valuable fisheries resources, while protecting the coast from storms and coastal erosion. Malaysia is among the richest countries in terms of marine biodiversity, and marine resources provide essential contributions to the livelihood and sustenance of the people. However, ladies and gentlemen, coastal and marine ecosystems are dynamic. They continuously change, and they are usually affected by the ongoing utilization of the coastal and marine resources, in addition to climatic impacts. The management of our seas should therefore be aimed at balancing the need to continue or perpetuate the provisions of goods and services that we receive from these ecosystems, while allowing for sustainable development and economic activities to continue. That's pretty much the mantra now, right? As we move towards becoming a more developed country. Acknowledging this, MIMA, the Maritime Institute of Malaysia, in cooperation with PAMC, under a UNDP project a couple of years ago, conducted an assessment on the state of the country's ocean and coast with a focus on the blue economy. Now, this was the baseline research that was done pretty much in Malaysia then. And the aim was pretty much two main points. The first one was to provide a better understanding of the coast and seas around us, as well as of the threats from human activities and climate change, and the challenges in managing these areas. The second key aim was for the findings to be a contribution to the Blue Economy Baseline Assessment for Malaysia, as well as to aid policy making planning and management of the coastal and marine areas, including the resources, the environment, the economic activities, as well as to foster collaboration between different interagency and relevant authorities. Now, since then, MIMA has also collaborated with Academy Science Malaysia, ASM under MOSTI, to further deepen our work on blue economy through the National Position Paper on Blue Economy, which was published in 2023. This paper is available online. You can download it from ASM's webpage. And currently, we are conducting work in progress with the Ministry of Economy Malaysia on developing a blue economy blueprint for the country. And I believe perhaps maybe some of you who are attending this webinar today are also part of this exercise that we've been carrying out with the Ministry of Economy Malaysia. Now, distinguished participants, having said all those things in my intro, allow me to elaborate a bit more on blue economy and its importance for the coastal and marine areas. Now, the blue economy concept has basically evolved from the broader green movements and the growing awareness of the threats imposed on ocean ecosystems by human activities. The concept is increasingly gaining momentum as governments, especially in this ASEAN region, adopt and implement a more sustainable balance between economic growth and the maintenance of ocean health. The blue economy concept, therefore, focuses on development of existing marine sectors to further generate employment. But while doing that, it also promotes entrepreneurship in new areas of economic activities. It also facilitates interconnectivity between ocean users and contribute to sustainable development and climate change mitigation. Having said that, on a broader sense, blue economy development should be able to show the critical role and contribution of ocean economic activities, as well as mainly the coastal and marine ecosystems to the national economies. It should be able to provide evidence for informed policy and decision-making on related areas, as well as to examine the benefits, the cost, and the impacts at the local levels. If conducted properly, and I'm emphasizing on this, it should be conducted properly, it would create opportunities for industries also to transit to a more sustainable and environment-friendly practices for new and innovative investments to be focused on promoting and restoring the ocean health while we develop our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, MIMA's baseline study, the study that I mentioned earlier with PEMC and UNDP, showed that the baseline contribution of the ocean economy sector to the country's GDP was valued at about 23%, then in about 2016, 2017. And at that point of time, there were about 4% of the total employment share, which was invested in the ocean sectors, Malaysian people involved in ocean sectors. And the same was reported to be only about 13% sometime in 2005. Both this assessment was done by BIMA. Now, since then, we've been trying to further improve our accuracy in the data, especially on GDP generated from the ocean sectors. But over the years, the main priority areas that has been identified and included in our assessment would include pretty much the same areas: fisheries and aquaculture, ports and shipping, tourism activities, ocean energy, extractive industries, to name a few examples. Additionally, in Malaysia, there are also studies that show the valuation of ecosystem services to make a case for treating ecosystems as capital goods that generate values, thereby helping to justify biodiversity protection on economic grounds. For instance, if some of you have seen this before, there are such values that has been generated for our marine parks. What is the economic contribution from tourism and the ecosystems as a whole, for instance? With the growing importance of blue economy development, the government is also advocating for a path that emphasizes conservation while maintaining economic development, as emphasized recently in the 13 Malaysia Plan. And I believe Dr. Naim will be speaking more on this aspect later. Now, having said all those things about blue economy and coastal and marine ecosystems, ladies and gentlemen, I have a few points to make in terms of what is really required here when we try to link this. An important issue of the blue economy is for us to understand and better manage the many aspects of the coastal and marine ecosystems sustainably, ranging from sustainable fisheries to ecosystem health to pollution and etc. The second point is for us to realize that the sustainable management of ocean resources would require collaboration among the various stakeholders at different levels. be it federal, state, local level, international, regional, and so on, as well as across the public-private sectors, and most likely on a scale that has not been previously achieved. And hence it makes blue economy not an easy exercise. This brings me to the third point, that we need to embrace integrated approach to coastal and marine management. We should try to move away from sector-based to a more comprehensive approach. And sometimes this is easier said than done, because we've been saying this over the years, but a blue economy probably is one way to go with this pathway. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, more can be done to ensure that the ecosystem services are preserved and delivery of future benefits from the coastal and marine ecosystems are sustainable. There are more things that we can be doing. The ocean sector is crucial, as I mentioned, to Malaysia's economy, to its resources, to its ecosystem services. But what would be required pretty much is for us to try to take a few steps, and this could include assessing the physical and human resources that would be required, investments in research, science and technology, collaboration that is pretty much enhanced than what we have now, as well as the review and formulation of policies and legislative frameworks. We look at current policies and what is required, and what about the legislative frameworks to support some of these actions. Initiatives or activities on the ground could be developing a blue economy profile, for instance, for the country, the need to formulate a national ocean policy, the need to conduct pilot studies to help define and refine Malaysia's conception of a blue economy, promote the use of ocean economy data in marine planning, and this could be done through the adoption of management tools, suitable ones like marine spatial planning, something that we are already talking about quite broadly now, ICZM, integrated coastal zone management, for instance, to ensure sustainability. Having said all these points to you on coastal and marine ecosystems and blue economy, I think what I would really want to emphasize is that the overall management of our coastal and marine ecosystems should focus on balancing the need to continue or perpetuate the provision of goods and services from the sea while allowing for sustainable development. That's really the challenge that we have at hand. I could say much more, but given the time I have, I will stop here. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Back to you, Jasmin.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, right on the dot, 10 minutes. So yeah, so you touched on a lot of key outcomes that we would like to see. You touched on the tools, the policy side of the National Oceans policy, and the legal challenges, legislative changes that might be required to do all that. So those are the really big stuff that I mean really need to happen in order to affect change. So talking about policies, what the government has been doing. So I would like to move now to Dr. Naim to continue the discussion.
Thank you, Jasmin, esteemed panelists, English participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to everyone. First and foremost, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to CGM as well as this Reef Check for inviting me to be part of this important forum. Before we chart our further actions related to protecting our coastal and marine ecosystems, I would like to firstly highlight the strategic values, the threats and also the potential of our marine and coastal ecosystems. Cheryl has highlighted a very good strategic values of coastal and marine ecosystems by providing the potential in terms of blue economy. I will now highlight the basic ecosystem services provided by the marine and ecosystem, marine and coastal ecosystems. It covers all 4 key elements of ecosystem services, from the provisioning, regulating, supporting, and also cultural services. In terms of provisioning services, it provides main sources of food for us in order for us to survive in the long run. In terms of regulating services, we also provide important ecological services for regulating the air quality, the removing of pollutants, as well as to protecting shorelines from erosions. In terms of supporting services, it helps it helps to stabilize the environment and also provide habitable environment for various species. And last but not least, in terms of cultural services, it provides sense of cultural identity, especially to people living in the coastal area. In a nutshell, the key strategic values can be categorized into three values. The first one is on ecologically, second on economically. It has been highlighted well by Cheryl, how we can gain the economic benefits as well as enhancing our quality of life in the long run, sustainably, and finally on socially. Whereas the marine and coastal biodiversity ecosystems will underpin food security, livelihood, and community well-being. Now we have already understand the values, but there are so many threats that will hinder the process of upholding the values. Based on the National Policy on Biological Diversity, 2022-2030, the policy framework that provide the biodiversity conservation actions by 2030 to achieve the conservation of biodiversity, to promote the sustainability use of biodiversity, and also to ensure fair and equal sharing of the benefit arising from biodiversity. This policy has highlighted five key threats. The first one is on the issues of overfishing and illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. This was mainly due to unsustainable fishing practices that have caused depleted fish stocks as well as damaged the key habitats. Second threat is the habitat loss and degradation. We are now in the process of urbanization, and we can see a lot of land use change, in particular in the coastal area. And coastal development, aquaculture expansion, land reclamation have led to destruction of key ecosystems for our coastal and marine ecosystem, in particular mangrove, coral reef, sea grass beds, and also the mangrove forest. This will have a significant impact to our our ecosystem, especially in providing as hatcheries or nurseries for marine life. A third threat is the pollution and waste mismanagement that was caused by the discharges from agriculture, industries, urban area, release sediment, sewage, etc. Plus, the recent development has shown that we are having a big problem in terms of our plastic waste to microplastic pollution. Climate change impacts have also been part of the threats for coastal and marine ecosystem, where rising sea temperatures cause coral bleaching, while sea level rise increases coastal erosion and flooding. Last but not least is about unsustainable tourism, especially within the coastal area. This was due to unregulated tourism, poor waste disposal, and infrastructure development. Sorry. I think that there's another one key threats that have been also highlighted by the national policy, where it is about the lack of enforcement. Weak of enforcement and fragmented governance, from my point of view, is also a big issue, especially in terms of legislation, limited coordination, and insufficient enforcement capacity. Now let's look at the pathways for protection as have been highlighted in the national policy on vegetal diversity. The NBBD 2022-2030 has highlighted 5 key actions in protecting our coastal and marine ecosystem. The first one is on strengthening policy, planning, and governance, whereby the target 3 of the MPBD has highlighted the need to integrate biodiversity conservation into national policy, state, and local special plan. It can be in the form of national development plan in our 13 management plan, up to the state structure plan and also local district plan. It must be well integrated so that the spatial planning can be integrated the principle of biodiversity conservation early in the beginning. In terms of legislation, there is also a need to strengthen the enforcement of Fisheries Act and also the Environmental Quality Act to address IUU and also the issue of unsustainable land use change. Number 2 is regarding the expanding and managing protected area. As all of us aware, target of MPAs, the Marine Protected Area, as highlighted or as stated in the national policy, is 10% by 2030. And as of now, our achievement is only about at 5.4%. There's a lot of efforts that need to be taken into consideration to achieve the targets in the next 4 years. The marine protected areas are very crucial as we need to protect our ecosystems at the landscape or at the seascape level to provide better impact in terms of conservation. The NPBD has also highlighted the need to mainstream the OECM, the other effective area-based conservation measures. It can be in the form of co-managed areas with indigenous people and local communities, and it can also involve private partners in taking care of certain identified areas to promote in situ conservation. Recently, we have our good initiative on EBSA, the ecologically or biologically significant marine areas that can become a tool for us to provide science evidence in helping the policy makers determining the key biodiversity areas that need to be protected. The third one, in terms of the actions that have been highlighted in this policy, is to promote sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, pollution control and habitat restoration, sustainable and community-based tourism. I will elaborate further as I have time after this. I will stop here at this moment and we will continue in the next cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naim. Yeah, for being very diligent with your time. Yeah, as you go along, there's a lot of questions that goes into my head. So it's more along the lines of institutional arrangements. How do we make sure everybody work closely together? How do we make that work? At the end of the day, it's the beneficiaries that we are looking out for their social well-being, economic well-being as well. So I would like to move now to Professor Dr. Sazlina to continue the session.
Hi. Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Thank you again, CGM, for this fruitful discussion. Thank you for making time for this critical conversation. So we have seen from Dr. Naim and also Cheryl about how stressed our environment is now. Our challenge today isn't about identifying the problem, as we all have seen the stress on our coastal zones. It is now about recognizing the opportunity embedded within our national goals. We see that our commitment in RMK 13, SGD, and Blue Economy is very clear. My focus on the presentation today will look at a practical framework that show how we can institutionalize success by partnering with people on the water, working with the community. We move science from the university, from the lab, onto the fisherman's boat, where the work can actually happen. So this is the aim for what we are protecting our coastal. So let's start with the economic reality, which has been covered by Cheryl. Conservation is the national wealth of creation. So the blue economy is essential engine that justify our framework. Our healthy ecosystem are foundation for the economy. So when we have economic stability, we will push for a good economy background. As we see now, mangrove and coral reef are the nursery ground for up to 90% of our commercial fish stock. Securing their health in securing a predictable, sustainable food source for our market. And secondly, we see a high value growth. You cannot build a stable ecotourism industry or grow a high value marine product on a degraded ecosystem. So that is a fact. So the health of our coast is the natural capital that guarantees return of the investment across high sector. So for this, I see that the locally managed areas or indigenous and community conserved areas can instantly secure this capital by ensuring local stewardship. So it has to start from the bottom. So having good policy, having a wide ocean policy, but without getting the people to do it, it won't push for a good outcome. So now I want to talk a bit on the social contract, the belonging and the tenure and the stewardship of the area. So to execute the blue economy vision, we must first strengthen the social contract with the coastal communities. So this is where the concept of tenure and belonging is paramount. It's very important here. So one of the examples that I would want to pick is the Tun Mustafa Park in Sabah. Because they transform a conservation into a social and economic investment opportunity for the community. So in incentivizing this stewardship, automatically will grant this and secure the tenure and management rights to the community-based organization or the community itself. Means they are protecting their source of livelihood and their asset. So this shift from their motivation from compliance to deeply rooted generation stewardship. So the sense of belonging is there. Secondly, we look at the ownership and enforcement. So Dr. Naim talked about IUU is one of the problem. So when the community owns the ecosystem, it's like their house. When they own their house, they have every incentive to enforce local rules, reducing resources crime such as the IUU fishing, far more effectively than external government patrols. So this is cheap, fast and efficient. So the sense of belonging in the human factor that drive long-term policy success. So the third section that I would want to talk is strategic improvement, data and communication. To scale up the local management marine areas nationwide, we must overcome the historical challenge that we have faced now related to the information flow. We know that by enhancing data integration, we can do a lot of things. For example, data has been siloed. So university has their own data, government department agency has their own data portal. So the solution lies, what I can suggest here is to upgrade or enhance our citizen science. Get the people to collect data, information, and the scientific community have to partner with them to standardize the data. So ensuring that the fair data principle is practiced, findable, accessible, interpretable, and reusable. So this transform community efforts into credible, policy-ready evidence and usable in nationwide system. So secondly is improving the scientific communication. In the university, a lot of good science has been done nationally and internationally. So research funding needs to prioritize outputs that are we have to prioritize research that can be translated, that can be used by people, the community, and also the country. We need to shift away from purely academic metrics and invest on ocean literacy program, ocean governance program for the citizens and policymaker. This ensures the economic and scientific imperative behind conservation is clearly understood, generating the necessary political and public support for unified action. And finally, the way forward would be the recommendation on transitional governance model by institutionalizing the local management area approach to clear policy loop. So Cheryl has spoken on the national ocean policy. I would echo on that. We need a unified policy to support our conservation effort. So that is one of the most important thing, to have everything in place to govern. Secondly is get the scientific community to work with the local community, fishermen on the boat, to validate the citizen science data, fits directly into the national governance dashboard, have a governance portal that scientists can upload and give feedback on their data. So this, and provide the quantitative basis for good legislation and policy to enforce necessary rules and to back up our policy. So this is very crucial action that needed to be done. So the commitment is simple. By formalizing the social contract to tunnel and supporting local groups with transitable science, we can turn our coastal areas into sustainable asset for the blue economy and also secure the future for the rakyat, or for the people. Right. Resilience begins with healthy ecosystem and empowerment of community, and science and society must work hand in hand. Thank you. So that is my point.
Thank you, Dr. Sazlina. Yes, resonates very closely to me and also to Reef Check, actually, in terms of the programs that we are looking at, working on the ground. So last but not least, of course, all of these recommendations would not work without collaboration with everyone. So we are talking about how do we want to operationalize this? We need technical input, we need financial support, and so on. So how do we fund all these initiatives? So with that, I would like to invite Norizan to address this and her take on this.
Thank you, Jasmin. Assalamualaikum, and good morning to ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for making the time for this very interesting conversation and one of my passions, although I've been working mostly on terrestrial for many, many years. So I have a deck of slides that I want to share. All right, so unlocking new pathways, and I'll try to focus more on terms of biodiversity stewardship and also biodiversity certificates, because the stewardship actually led to certificates. But before that, let's go to the definition of stewardship. Basically, it's a commitment to protect biodiversity and ecosystems. It's efficient use of natural resources. It's continuously trying to improve your environmental performance and ensuring compliance with environmental requirements. And this is should be shared by all, by individuals, by communities, by government and non-government organizations, as well as companies. And why is it important? I think we've heard from all the speakers, from Cheryl, from Dr. Naim, even from Prof. Sazlina, on why it's so important. We are all at risk, basically, if we do business as usual. And it's actually been highlighted by the World Economic Forum year on year as one of the biggest global risks. So one of the tools that we have in Malaysia, and this is enshrined in the National Policy of Biological Diversity, as per what Dr. Naim already mentioned, is protected areas, and there's terrestrial and marine. So our current coverage for marine is actually 5.4. Apologies if I have 5.3 there. The target is 10%, so we're going towards that by 2030. And PAs are mainly in Malaysia funded by public funds, which is currently insufficient for effective management and representation. So if you look at some of the key areas in protected area governance, certain things like management plans, sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. Some, unfortunately, are actually just paper parks with the ones that do have management plans. Financing, resources, active protection can be minimal, also benefits to local communities. And the last but not least is revenue to the state. Very, very important, because land and water and parts of the sea, territorial waters, also belong to the state and under their purview. So how can biodiversity stewardship actually contribute and complement traditional public funds? So one of the examples in our own backyard is by community and NGO-driven stewardship is actually the Community Marine Conservation Group. It was started by Reef Check in 2014 and is now part of the Reef Care program under the Department of Fisheries. It actually started as a Tioman Marine Conservation Group. It's grown to a membership of 80 people, if I'm not mistaken, and they do conservation activities. So what do they do exactly? They do reef check monitoring surveys, they do coral rehab, restoration, they remove ghost nets, they do cleanups, crown of thorns management, water quality and bleaching monitoring, community consultations, mapping of marine resources, and education and awareness programs. So there's already 9 of these CMCGs across Malaysia, 4 in Sabah and 5 in Peninsular Malaysia. However, speaking to Teresa from Reef Check, she mentioned that funding, the maximum period of funding that they have for this is only 3 years up to now. That's a good start, but in order to actually have impact, there needs to be sufficient and long-term funding. And that's where the private sector could also come in. And this is where biodiversity credits has actually been born out of biodiversity stewardship. So what is a biodiversity credit? It's a certificate that presents a measured and evidence-based unit of positive biodiversity outcome, and it's durable and additional to what otherwise would have occurred. And they are used in compliance schemes globally, where the law requires offsets on net gain. They are also found now in voluntary markets, but this is a very nascent market. And where companies or individuals can pay for biodiversity outcomes, even beyond legal requirements. So there are different types around. There's ecosystem credits, habitat, species credits. There's even restorative uplift credits where you create or regenerate habitat or species populations. And there's maintenance and avoided loss, where you prevent damage or decline. And private sector schemes actually outnumber government and indigenous and local community schemes currently by up to 88%. So why are the private sector actually buying? So many various reasons, as you can see on the right-hand side. Compliance schemes, they need to offset or they need to gain. Stakeholder pressure, another one. They also can staple these products for green premium, and they might even be able to access cheaper financing from sustainability-linked loans and also compliance market. Types of biodiversity unit-based models. There's 3 in general. There's carbon credits with biodiversity co-benefits. There is standalone biodiversity units, and it's further broken down into credits and offsets. And there's hybrid models. I won't talk about the hybrid models. It's a bit more complicated. I'll just focus on the other 2 on the left-hand side. So with carbon credits, with biodiversity co-benefits, it's basically traded on the voluntary carbon market. The main product is climate impact, but you can staple or stack or bundle it with biodiversity co-benefits. And currently there are probably 2 that I could find in terms of standards: the Climate, Community and Biodiversity Standards and the Sustainable Development Vista, which are both under VERA. Whereas for standalone biodiversity units, you have the credits, and it's very different to the offset because the credits actually, they're not linked to specific biodiversity loss. They're looking for a positive outcome for biodiversity, whereas for offsets, it is linked to a specific biodiversity loss. And the goal is no net loss or actually biodiversity net gain. And what exactly is a biodiversity credit describing? It's basically describing an outcome or an activity over a certain area over a time period. Okay, so a biodiversity credit is very different to a carbon credit. We know with a carbon credit, you have basically it's represented by 1 ton of carbon dioxide equivalent, where the removal, and so with biodiversity credits, there's no universal metric like carbon. And of course, biodiversity is more complex and multidimensional. Hence, building a single value metric for biodiversity is an overwhelmingly difficult thing to do. And for this reason, some credit methodologies actually quantify the actions instead of the precise ecological impacts. So I've listed down some of the biodiversity credits in practice globally, but if you look at the ones that are focused on marine, there's one in particular which is very large, is the New Ways Ocean Conservation Commitments. I'll go into a bit more detail later. There's in Malaysia, it's terrestrial. We've got the Malaysian Forest Fund, and currently on their website, they're showing this Darul Aman Sanctuary, which is 226 acres, voluntary, and it's actually looking at tropical rainforest. For carbon and biodiversity co-credits and blue carbon specifically, there is a sea trees and climate credits. It combines carbon and biodiversity, and it focuses on restoring seagrass beds, mangroves. And there's another one which is currently under development by Forest Carbon, a project developer in Misul Island, Raja Ampat, Indonesia. And it's actually currently being developed and piloted under the Vera Nature framework. So just a quick example of sea trees. This one, if you actually go to their website, you can actually buy and purchase, biodiversity blocks. And it's a unit that represents a discrete action. So say you wanted to support planting mangroves in either Kenya and Mexico, you'd have to pay $10 to plant 10 saplings. Say if you wanted to support planting coral fragments, in Bali, Costa Rica, and Fiji, the price would be $25 for 1 coral fragment. So this type of biodiversity credit is actually targeted to individuals and small donors. And what's interesting is that the blocks are issued and retired by a registry using blockchain as well, by the Regan network. And there is a bit of traceability. There's data, photos, media, and reports that are published. The next one, which is much larger, is a Niue Ocean-wide Trust Ocean Conservation Commitments. And basically, this is an island in the Pacific Ocean, and it aims to raise 32 million New Zealand dollars by selling the certificates at a price of 150 US dollars for each for 20 years. So I won't go into detail about how it looks like, but I'll just look at the funding mechanism. And actually the budget that's been set for this operational fund is 1.5 million New Zealand dollars per year. The 32 million New Zealand dollars per year, the annual interest of that goes into that. And the actions are going towards conservation, basically enforcement, management, risk reduction, capacity building, and even cost mitigation. But up to now, the largest donors are actually the bilateral countries and also from philanthropy. So they do need to fill that coffer up to another 25 million New Zealand dollars. Another interesting one in terms of reefs is a reef credit system for the Great Barrier Reef. So this one, it actually tries to address the issue of poor water quality by paying land managers for improved water quality resulting from their on-farm actions, but without compromising productivity of their land. And what's interesting is each reef credit is a tradable unit representing 1 kilogram of nutrient, which is basically dissolved in organic nitrogen here, or 538 kilograms of sediment prevented from entering the Great Barrier Reef. So some challenges and key considerations. It's a very nascent market. There's issues around integrity. So one thing that comes to mind straight away is how do you quantify biodiversity uplift or avoidance of loss, for example? And then there's another one where you have to look at additionality. The credit must represent outcomes that would not have happened without the credit. And then thirdly, how do you ensure permanence? It's the same with terrestrial areas. So you might have storms, you might have climate change. You might even have leakage where you protect one area and it goes somewhere else, Equity and governance as well, especially with the inclusion of local and indigenous communities, and regulation and legal framework, whether they are actually legally recognized. Will there be a statutory market or will it be purely voluntary? Those are big questions. So some of the main takeaways: biodiversity stewardship is gaining traction and it's resulted in the design of activities, tools, and markets towards conservation. So the private sector's role can be further enhanced by providing financing for long-term as part of their ESG commitments, because impactful conservation requires that long-term resource. Governments and regulators can play a crucial role. Number one is because we need to empower and strengthen non-government actors to manage or implement activities. And secondly, to promote the supply of high integrity nature financing mechanisms. So I will end there. Sorry if I've gone a bit overboard, but yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Norizan. So the main take that I take from there would be the market for coastal and marine biodiversity credits or financing mechanism is not fully mature yet for us here, and there's more work needs to be done, more evaluation, what kind of mechanism that we should apply when it comes to coastal and marine ecosystem. How do we value them, and how do we raise fund based on their value? So there are several questions already in the Q&A boxes. Thank you, Dr. Naim, for responding to a few of them. I would like to just highlight those that have not been answered by the panel in the question box. So there's one. I'm not putting anybody in the spot here. There's a question for DOE. of Malacca's coast, important nesting areas for endangered turtles. It's very famous turtle landing sites. Concerns raised, why are coastal reclamation still allowed nearby, which may or have threatened the nesting sites of the turtles? And also, I think we can combine it to in terms of the release of polluted smelly water, or basically sewerage into the sea through the Sungai Lirik in Malacca. No actions have been taken. I guess basically, how can the Environmental Quality Act be strengthened? And I know there are the pro and cons to the EQ8 is the non-point solution and the point solutions of pollution. So anybody would want to have their thoughts on this? Any takers?
It's quite a tricky question. I was hesitating to take this because I might not be the right person to answer this. But on a general level, maybe I'll try to attempt. And then maybe another panel could take it up further. I think we have to acknowledge that, coastal land and 3 nautical miles water from there is under the state government. Now, that's often the reason why we always say one of the biggest challenges in Malaysia is to streamline actions between federal government and state government. And that remains to be an issue because of the different priorities, perhaps. We cannot blame certain parties because maybe development is a priority to them. But having put in place clear mechanisms, clear streamlined objectives and policies that is agreeable between the federal and state government, I think would be the way forward to address this. At the same time, I also agree that, some of the provisions that are already in place, such as the legislation, the Environmental Quality Act, there are, other related treaties as well that we have to enforce. These conflicting users of the coastal areas and the sea areas has remained to be a big challenge over many years. I believe since I first started working on policy research, I've been seeing this same issue coming up again and again. But the point I'm making is that the land area and the 3 nautical miles is under the state government. So this is happening because this is a priority for the state government. Indirectly, that's what the answer is. And beyond that, it falls under the federal government. And that's why we are today at this, platform highlighting how should we work further towards improving this connectivity. Why are we formulating new policies to make sure that these 2 elements are taken into consideration? Now, of course, I have to say that, better enforcement is also required in quite a number of areas. Sometimes you have the best of documents in place, but if you don't enforce them, becomes a challenge as well in itself there. So I hope I've given a bit of a pointer on this angle. I believe there are many questions that are related to this. Thank you, Jasmin.
Thanks, Cheryl. Yes, so this federal and state conversation has been going on for quite a number of years. And I guess because, like you were saying, different ministries have different jurisdictions. They have different Puan Kuasa, they have different act that they are using. So that's, I would say, no platform for these differing agencies, be it federal and state, to come together and address on an issue, for example, and then try to work out and share resources. Maybe ad hoc, jawatan kuasa when issues comes up, but what would be the sustainable or ongoing platform in existence now? Do we have that? It reminds me of one of the recommendation in the National Biodiversity Policy, Dr. Naim, about thematic working groups. So maybe as a start, before we start working on an NOP, it's an exciting chapter anyway, but find a platform that where all these decision makers, stakeholders could come together. It's easier said than done. We know that we need technical support, financial support to operationalize that as well. Not to dwell much on that, there's another question here on. Julian, are you online?
Yes, Jasmin, perhaps I would like to add a little bit more
Correct.
as
Okay,
what has been
go on.
mentioned by Cheryl. since DOE is one of agencies under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, but I cannot provide certain feedback on the issues. But I would like to highlight that there are two key actions that need to be done in order to strengthen further the EQA. This has been explicitly indicated in our national policy, whereby the EIA review process needs to be more stringent towards ecologically and biodiversity impact, especially at the state level. We know about the jurisdiction, and we would like to see the review process at the state level will be much more stringent. And secondly is to also include the post-EIA monitoring enforcement to ensure environmental mitigation measures are implemented and effective during the construction phase. This has been outlined in Target 4, and policy. One of the key policy challenges is to translate the policy into tangible and real action on the ground. But we have a very clear policy direction, and with proper consultations, as what had been mentioned by Jasmin, we can establish a dedicated technical working group under the National Biodiversity Council that can discuss this further. Although TWG is the lowest tiers of the NPBD, but the recommendation, the suggestion can be escalated up to the National Biodiversity Council.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Naim. Thanks for reminding me. I read that in the policy as well about the stringent, more stringent process for EIA processes. So the next question, Julian, if you're online, there's one specific question for Reef Check. What formal relationships does Sabah Parks have with NGOs such as Reef Check itself, and how are roles and responsibilities shared or funded? So I guess they are interested in how we have cultivated our relationship as an NGO with Sabah Parks, and also, if I may say, the communities as well. Are you online,
Okay.
Julian? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here, Jasmin. Thank you for asking the question. I'm a non-presenting panelist, hiding in the background a little bit. But to try and answer that question, we have been conducting reef check monitoring surveys in Sabah since about 2008. And simply over that time, we have developed a good relationship with Sabah Parks because we work together with them on conducting surveys. And I think they recognize that there are some things it's easier for us to do and some things it's better for them to do, particularly working at community level, for example, where we have members of the community who we're working with who are actually implementing programs. And so, if you go onto a small island around Semporna, and you are from the government, big scary feature from the government, you get a different response from if it's someone from our team who's already a local islander and knows the community anyway. So I think that's how those relationships evolve. It's simply recognizing that different people are able to do different things in different ways. Some people can do things differently or better. We are talking about the formal side of it. We are discussing with Sabah Parks the idea of having a memorandum of understanding to put things on a formal basis. So that's one way to do it. We raise our own funds, so we are not competing with Sabah Parks in that way. We're not. There's no conflict there, because if we want to run projects in, for example, the Semporna Islands, we raise the funds ourselves. So we kind of decide, just what it is we want to do in discussion with them, in discussion with Sabah Biodiversity Centre. So it's all very, open. We talk to them often. We talk to them freely about what we want to do, and how it fits with what they want to do, so that we're not in conflict with them. So it's a combination of knowing the people on the ground, being able to raise the funds ourselves, and understanding what everybody's needs are.
Thanks, Julian. I hope that answers the question there. There's one interesting question here that I'm seeing Dr. Naim is typing as well, but I would assume that it'll be useful for everyone here as well. There's a question about how ecological fiscal transfers, EFTs, from the federal to state governments to keep coastal areas intact from overdevelopment and restored from degradation, with clear milestones and targets that have to be met. Your take on this, Dr. Naim?
Thank you, Jasmin. I was about to finish typing the answer, but for the benefit of all, I would like to answer this as in the forum. So I think EFT since the introduction in 2019 is mainly to expand the marine protected areas. So one of the key scopes, there are 8 scopes under EFT. One of the key scopes is to expand the marine protected area. About 800 million has been dispersed to state in order to encourage them, incentivize them by using that particular education for conservation purposes. This has benefited a lot to the state level. From our record, the gazettement of marine protected area has drastically increased from 2021 to 2023 with over 170 million hectares, mainly the new MPAs in Peninsular Malaysia as well as in Sabah and Sarawak. Another important point in terms of the implementation of EFT is the introduction of key performance indicators or key performance criteria, where states with strong efforts in protecting their marine and coastal ecosystem will get a higher allocation in the following years. If in the previous years, the performance criteria is only 30%, but from this year onward, it has been increased to 50%. So in a nutshell, by having stronger efforts in protecting coastal and marine ecosystems, the state will get higher return in terms of EFT allocation.
Thank you, Dr. Naim. Okay, so we're getting a host of questions here. I'm trying to relate your response to Dr. Gary's question. Thank you so much to all panelists. Recently released planetary health check indicator we have transgressed the planetary boundary on ocean acidification. Although its changes is small, it's expected to change our highly sensitive zones, sensitive intertidal neritic zone. Anything can be done to at least reduce the rate of acidification and the impact of this ecosystem. I know this is science-based, but what does EFT funding could help to work on this and how to address this as well, because it will at the end of the day impact the protected areas as well, the health of the ecosystem around the protected area. Would the fund cover this kind of research?
The answer is yes, Jasmin. EFT education can be used in managing pollution as well as waste management to reduce the ocean acidification. It can also help in our climate change mitigation activities.
Any takers, any scientists here would like to add on to answering this question? What can we do to reduce the rate of acidification and its impact on these ecosystems?
If I may, Jasmin,
Yep.
not an awful lot. I mean, these ecosystems have evolved over literally millions and millions of years. and we are changing them in what is a relatively short timescale. I think, as with several of the questions, what could be answered with a response along the lines of, we need to better appreciate how important these ecosystems are for fisheries habitats, as Dr. Naim mentioned earlier on, for coastal protection, it's been mentioned, for livelihoods and jobs, for tourism and so on. And all those things rely on these ecosystems to create economic activity, to create jobs and cultural activities and so on. And if we don't start to look after these ecosystems, we're going to lose them, and therefore we're going to lose those ecosystem services. The question of ocean acidification is just the same thing, but longer term. It's a question of the oceans are in balance today, and yesterday, now they're not. What are we doing wrong, and how do we address that? It comes back to the same question: understanding and getting a deeper appreciation of just how these ecosystems affect our lives. I'm sure that Prof or Cheryl would add to that as well from the community or policies perspective. But that's my take on it. We need to start behaving and look after these ecosystems.
Thanks, Julian. There's one question that maybe could relate to your responses, and other panelists could chime in. Question on what strategies can be implemented to ensure accountability and effectively monitor positive impact of tourism initiatives. So we are looking into a specific industry here, which is tourism, on safeguarding marine ecosystem. What's the role of the local communities, and how they could help out in terms of monitoring or reporting tourism initiative, and to ensure that, well, the tourism industry thrive around healthy ecosystems. So it's like Julian said, it's to the benefit to everyone. So what's your take on this? Anyone? Dr. Sazlina, do you want to start first?
Yeah. Thank you, Jasmin. To actually look into tourism impact by the local community, first we need to ensure that the economic sustainability of the people is stable. Because when we talk about tourism, it is an income for them, money generating income for the local community. So by saying that, hey guys, you need to stop people from coming to conserve the ecosystem, limit the people, I don't think the community are able to do that because it is giving them income. But if we provide them with alternative income, for example, ecotourism, or getting them to have a aquaculture farm to support their livelihood, and then add farm visiting as one of the tourism activity, we can do that. But to get them to stop tourism, have a number limit, is very difficult if that is their income. So their economic well-being is more important for them rather than the ecosystem. But we can educate them to understand about, if you destroy the environment, if there's too much people off limit of the carrying capacity, you won't have a sustainable tourism in the long run. So awareness and educating them is first. Having a economical stability is another thing that we have to look into, and then we can get them as a guardian or a owner of that area for them to manage and provide us feedback on the ecosystem, on the stability of sustainability of that ecosystem itself. Because as we can see, the small islands in Sabah is booming in terms of tourism. So that in other hand will result in development, and a lot of development will come in with tourism. So education on the awareness, and have to get the people to know about the ocean literacy is something that is important first.
Can I just add to that, Jasmin?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Prof, for saying that. I totally agree. But I think basically it also needs to be incentivized somewhat. Some economic activities that are tied to outcomes for biodiversity that are positive should also come into play. And that's where these innovative financing mechanisms that are out right now could play a role. However, as I mentioned before, the integrity of these financing mechanisms are in question. So there really is a need for a purview, a higher purview, maybe at the government and regulatory level, to try to push this, maybe in a roadmap somehow.
Yes, thank you, Norizan. Yeah, I remember Dr. Salleh mentioned about the co-management approach with the communities themselves. So that requires some form of institutionalizing the co-management approach to give the communities power to make decisions and whatnot. That includes being financially responsible, being innovative in their livelihoods, in their economic activities as well, and also as a group they could give feedback on if there's any mechanism, suitable financing mechanism for the sustainability of their community as well.
Jasmin,
anyone else? Yes, Julian.
I'm just going to respond to what's just been said and the latest question from Alicia about different perspectives. We have Dr. Naim from the government, we have Dr. Sazlina from academia, we have Norizan from the private sector, we have Mima from the policy long-term research, and you've got us, the NGO. And this question says, we've all got different perspectives. And the one person not mentioned in that question is private sector, government agencies, NGOs. The one person not in there is the local community. And I think we all, and I include myself and Dr. Naim and Prof and Dr. Sazlina, we all look at this problem from our own perspective, instead of from the community's perspective. What does the community want? As Dr. Sazlina says, well, it's all, it's just jobs to them. The mangrove is there to provide food and jobs. Its ecosystem services are irrelevant to that island. They make money out of it. And I think we all forget that with our little do-gooder hats on. We forget that at the end of the day, there are local people involved here who want a long-term sustainable income. So I think the key thing we need to understand is Dr. Naim wants to see biodiversity mainstreamed at state level. Dr. Sazlina wants to look after the interests of the local communities. Mima, Cheryl wants to look at long-term policy development. But we all need to sit and look at this from the perspective of the little man on the ground and say, what does he need? What are his challenges? What are his problems? We've seen this on Mantanani, for example, just one area where tourism went from 50 a day to 3,000 a day. Who was in charge and what was the local community getting out of that? Not a lot. So I think we all need to kind of change our perspectives and take a different perspective and look at it from the point of view of the man on the ground.
Thanks. Thank you, Julian. Yeah. Anyone would want to add on?
Perhaps I would like to echo what has been said by Mr. Julian. I think one of the keys is to engage and to empower indigenous people and local communities, especially those staying around the tourism sites, so that they can be involved heavily in the process of ecotourism planning and the implementation. These are very important because besides their traditional knowledge, we should also blend the traditional knowledge with the science evident knowledge to actually to come with one nature-based solutions. First, to generate income, and secondly, of how we can sustainably increase their livelihood.
Thank you, Dr. Naim. Yes, so you all agree that everybody needs to come together and solve a common issue here. But one of the main challenges would be who not to say who gives the local communities power. In what way can the local communities' views, their traditional knowledge, can be formally institutionalized and be taken seriously as part of the planning processes? What's the main issue here? That we've been saying all this local community involvement, participatory management, yes, but what's is there a mechanism, formal mechanism to actually officially accept their views as a part of the decision-making process? So where do you see lacking in terms of the maybe institutional arrangement between federal, state, local levels? So anyone who want to comment on that?
I may want to add a bit just to comment on that. Perhaps we can start with the local authority because they are the nearest to the local people. If the whole system is being pushed by the federal or state government, it'll be like an instruction to them. So it has to come from the community itself with the local authority that is very near to them. For example, penduduk kampung, penghulu kampung, there are such conservation effort that is being done in the ecotourism area in Indonesia that I've seen has been successful. Maybe we have to start small first, get the people, get the government to appreciate the effort of the people. And I think from talking to the local people, they want to see their ideas in the policy formulation. So this is what they want. They want to at least be acknowledged that they are the custodian of the area that they are living. So they want to have a bit of power, not exclusive power to the whole environment, but just to say we are closing the area from tourists for the breeding of fish for 2 months. No tourism, no nothing. So they have at least some rights towards that. Yeah.
Jasmin, Jasmin, if I can add, yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Jasmin. I appreciate all the comments made on this particular aspect, and it's usually one of the biggest challenges. And I totally agree with what Julian mentioned earlier. We sometimes tend to look at things from our own lens, and we don't appreciate. We think this is the best way forward, but it might not be for the people in that area, right? Over the years, also, I've seen some cases, unfortunately, not great ones, as well as some good ones. For example, if I turn the point a little bit towards ports development in Malaysia, right? It also happens in coastal areas. First thing first, it would affect the fishermen. And there has been, I won't be too specific on, I'm not going to mention names, but there have been instances where the industry tried to, put them in some other livelihood career. And in many cases, it doesn't work because these people are fishermen. So you have to think that, maybe some people, they would feel that, okay, I've taken your area for development, so I'm just going to give you something else. And I would believe that you'll be able to run that. Maybe you become a farmer, maybe you become a, poultry farm owner or something like that. But in essence, we have to understand that, when we talk about an example like this, fishermen are fishermen. It's not easy for you to take them out from that. And I think one of the better examples probably would be what's happening in marine parks, for instance. There were, I believe, in several years ago, I think this been discussed over and over, where local people were taken in as park rangers to help with, monitoring, enforcement, and so on. And that's one way to actually bring ownership to them. I think over many cases, case studies, we've seen that local people, one is, I agree, as Sazlina mentioned, they want their inputs to be taken into policy making. Second is, they don't want to just be talking, they want to be involved, practically involved in that. And I believe you have to make them understand why you are doing certain things in that area. Maybe, for instance, if I say Mima, it's probably easy. We just say, okay, this is a new policy. It should work for everyone. But they might not comprehend why we are doing certain things. We say we are managing the coral reefs, for instance, but they're saying that's our livelihood, right? So there has to be, one is not just input. I think there should be mechanisms to bring them on board, practically on board and involved, like, the park ranger example that I gave. Another point I like to make is a little bit connected to what we were discussing a bit ago. Tourism, we were linking them to coastal communities and so on, but Julian mentioned something very interesting. In some areas, as we see the rapid rise in tourism receipts in Malaysia over the last 1-2 years. I believe next year is going to be Visit Malaysia year. It's going to pick up even more, right? The impacts of tourism in sensitive areas should be something that we give specific attention to. I believe there are carrying capacity mechanisms, calculations are in place for many of our sensitive areas. Are we enforcing them? I believe there are challenges to enforce this because again, you see, this is a two-way sword. It's a catch-22 thing. If you reduce the number, you're going to reduce the income, right? But you have to find a proper way to do that. A couple of years ago, I remember MIMA, for instance, we made a recommendation to use limits of acceptable change, another tool, LAC, we call that, another tool. If you don't use carrying capacity, you have a bit more adaptability area-based, basically. But then it's a continuous effort that you have to do it, not just one do, like, okay, it's enforced, that's it. You have to continuously work on it. And the data that Reef Check, for instance, and the Department of Fisheries is generating on the health of coral reefs, let's say if you see there's a decline, what's the action you're going to take? Usually that happens when bleaching happens. We see, actions. But what about tourism? Do you move away people from that area, let's say, if that area is affected? How do you work on those kind of things? I'm just throwing some points here.
Cheryl, let me jump in there. And I know we've got to finish in 3 minutes, but I think it's very relevant. Some of this, about 6 islands in Johor have recently been closed by order of the, I think the Sultan, simply because of this very reason. Over tourism, too many tourists seem to be doing some physical damage. We're not quite sure what it is, but they've taken the steps to do that. And I'm like, I support that in terms of protecting the environment. But you've also got to ask the question, what about the tour guides who are just trying to make a living? So we're back to that same question of balancing different people's needs. And we're all sitting here in our ivory towers, you in yours, me in mine, saying, oh, they should do this. And I bet Dr. Sazlina does the same. But which of us is going on the ground to Mersing and speaking to the guy who drives the boat that takes the tourists out and makes 50 ringgit per person per day? Who is going and talking to the fishermen whose ecosystems are getting degraded? We need to get on the ground. We need to have this local mechanism. So if you want, the solution to all of these problems is, there you go, easy solution. Have a little committee locally where everybody has a voice and we actually sit down and we listen to different people's voices and then we take action on that. And I think that has to be at several levels. Dr. Naim doesn't want to go down to Mersing to have this conversation, but there should be a local committee that can do that and then report back up to state level and federal level. But I think we need to be listening better and we need to be giving local people more of a say and giving them a bit of respect and a bit of, okay, you live there, tell us what's going on. Sorry, I go on sometimes. Jasmin, over to you.
These are all very, very valid discussions here. But at the end of the day, it comes back to we have a very robust, comprehensive national biological diversity policy. Happy with it. And now is how do we operationalize it at all levels, not just at the federal, at state, down to the local community level. So at each of these levels would need to have a mechanism. It needs technical support, it needs financial support, and it needs long-term planning and with a long-term vision that the policy has. But unfortunately, the policy is, not to say unfortunately, it falls under NRES. Different ministries have their different policies, different objectives, different goals. So how do we address that? Even that at the policy level, at the federal level, but we know what we need to do down on the ground. The state federal challenges is going to be an ongoing issue, is how closely we work together and find a common ground to talk about issues and stuff. So the last 60 seconds here, I would like to thank everybody for their time. I thought 1.5 hours would be taking too long. Apparently not. We could have this discussion further along. Apologies to participants who questions that we might not have answered fully to your satisfaction. We hope to see you guys soon. Thank you, CGM, for organizing this roundtable session. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.